guys, it's Buddhagem, and this is a response to Guimarquito, who I've replied to some of his questions in Buddhagems Mailbox 3, and this is kind of a follow-up to that. He asked some more questions regarding my response to him. And Guimarquito, the first thing I want to say is really in response is, great questions. You're obviously a thoughtful, intelligent person. But what I'm getting from this, the message I'm getting from you, is that you're looking for a political philosophy that has all the answers, or can address any and all variables. If you find one, be very suspicious. I don't think such a thing exists, and I think that's one of the strengths of anarchism, is that we don't have a blueprint that can foresee any and all variables, all possible situations and scenarios. We don't have sacred texts like some of our other friends on the left that we can say, well, what did the great leader say in regards to this? Anarchism is constantly in flux and change because it is a dynamic struggle against power, basically. And so the modes of oppression and exploitation that we see and are fighting against now, there may be others that we're not even aware of at this point. So the idea that we could create a blueprint is antithetical to anarchism. So we don't have the answers to all of your questions, probably. And again, I would be very suspicious of any political philosophy or ideology that claimed they did have all the answers. With that said, let me get into answering some of your questions. So, your first question kind of revolved around small business, and how innovation going to happen, because people get into small businesses because they want to get rich, according to you. So, what I would ask you to do is focus your gaze on the United States in the last 50 years or so. Just about every major technological advance has come through the state sector here. Computers, the internet, the whole high-tech sector, aeronautics, automation, containerization, the biotech industry. It's all-encompassing. It really is. That's where the major innovation is happening, that is free of the risks of the market, right? No risks, and no profit motive, okay? Because very often science leads to dead ends, right? You can't tell what 30 years is going to create an internet or nothing. That's the gambles of science. And the reality is there's no private entity out there that wants to risk its wealth for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of research and development. It just doesn't happen.
You mentioned Spain and that they had the economy of the 1930s. Obviously, that's true. And I guess what you're hinting at is they didn't have the plethora of consumer goods that we have today. But even if we look at Spain, one thing that is very clear is that productivity increased across the board in agriculture and manufacturing. Now, why is that significant? Because in order for productivity to increase, innovation must be increasing. People are thinking of new and innovative ways to produce the goods and services that we needed. If those factors were true then, there's no reason they wouldn't be true today. That is, if workers were in charge, you got rid of the middlemen, the managerial class allowed workers to determine the best way to produce things. Productivity would increase. Innovation would increase. You think about it right now. You're talking about innovation. Innovation really, when we're talking about the 20th and 21st century, really depends upon cooperation among, dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of individuals working together. That cooperation is stymied to a huge degree in this capitalist system where everything is, it's property. The idea you have as a Google employee belongs to Google, and I mean, this goes across the board in different industries, different sectors, where information isn't shared, and this definitely hurts science to a huge degree. Where you have the big pharma out there, what they're really doing is learning how to change one molecule on Zoloft to change it into Zoloftio, and they can extend the patent. I mean, it's not innovation in any real sense, but yet tons of man hours, tons of money are being poured into these things to maintain their profit levels, their market share. Wouldn't anarchy require a huge level of preparation, education of the citizens? Certainly. I think that is really a prerequisite of civilization to some degree, and that the more we as a species would like to advance, it's going to requires work. Just living in a society requires participation, requires understanding how that society works, how it functions, etc. I don't think that would be unique to anarchism. I don't think it's something that we would, educate and work up to and then education would stop. I think it's a continual process that we as a species are inherently creative and curious, and we are going to continue to seek out and educate ourselves regardless of, how we develop, the modes that we take on as a society. Your third question was, how would the economy function where there are prices? And here you'll have to clarify. I'm not really sure whether... I'm skipping your question about the law. I'm going to deal with that in more detail in a subsequent video. And I'm going to move on to your last question, which dealt with globalization. You mentioned that when an economy isolates itself, they have trouble. It's a tough time to survive. How are you going to implement anarchy without people starving? And again, I just like to point out, maybe this is just semantics, but anarchy, it's not something we're trying to implement. It's a continual struggle. I don't think there's a barricade that we jump over and implement anarchy. But when you bring up hunger, the idea that starvation is even possibly a fear, we have to start with the facts. Right now, in this global capitalist system that we all live under, we have over 1 billion people in this world that are hungry. Over 1 billion. That's a billion with a B. 16,000 children. You can actually double that. 32,000 humans every day die of hunger-related illnesses. It's disgusting because there's enough food for everybody. But remember, when we talk about an economic system, economics is the science of, the production and the distribution of goods and services. Capitalism fails over and over. I mean, that statistic alone. When capitalism rules the day, and we have 1 billion people hungry, 32,000 every day dying of hunger-related illnesses. So when someone comes to me about, hey, how are you going to do it without starving people? We're starving people right now. If you think anarchism can't do better than that, I don't know what you're basing it on. In Spain, we do know that the productivity, the yields in the fields increased. There's, the fact is we don't even need to increase yields at this point. We just need to get the food to the people who need it. And anarchism is certainly, I think, capable of doing such a feat. So, in closing, let me just say that, if you really want to learn about anarchism, you have to hunker down and read. I'll include a couple links in the sidebar. The Anarchist FAQ is not the end all. If you want to take the Anarchist FAQ seriously, though, what they do a good job of is footnoting and showing you where they get their sources. So if you're reading something that you find answers, is at least attempting to answer a question you have, you can definitely delve in there and look at the books that they're citing from, the works, the authors, and head down to your library. Or there's a lot of these texts and books are online now, so it shouldn't be very hard to find the stuff that you want to look for if you're serious. Again, be wary of any kind of ideology that claims to have all the answers. Anarchism doesn't claim that, but we do have faith that collectively we can come together and figure these things out.